Just an
There are
FYI,
a number of them around, but
the microphones are very sensitive. So if you're making passive noise, they will all hear it. You can mute it while you're not talking. There you go.
thank you.
So they can hear us chewing.
Yeah. I did it once and I could hear everybody when I was joining from home. Okay. We have to.
Yes, please.
You gotta mute yours.
Yes, we're recording and you're live.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
Good. Welcome to the Planning Commission work meeting for Wednesday, October 6th, 2021. So just a reminder, this is a work meeting, not a business meeting, so we do not have any votes or any open public comment periods for this meeting. If we have any questions, we'll call on you to participate. But for those of you, I don't know if you have the agenda up because I just pulled mine up. But what we have on the agenda today for our work meeting items, 1.0, which is the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. We're looking forward to hearing from Avenue Consultants. And then 1.1, which is the Cottonwood Heights General Plan, which is undergoing an update. We'll get an update on how that's going. 1.2, Cottonwood Heights Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan. There have been a few changes since it came before the Planning Commission. We'll hear about those. And 1.3, oh, thank you, which will be any other discussion items that the Planning Commission sees fit to talk about. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to who's running for you. Is it Mike or Andy or Sam?
Andy's controlling. He's driving tonight.
All right, Andy, get us started.
We have Thomas McMurtry here with Avenue Consultants.
Yeah, come on up here and then turn that mic on.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to see what you're presenting.
What I'm presenting.
Yeah.
All right, and if I can share my screen, share the screen. Share. Okay, great. And I'll keep this right here for a while. I don't need to like go full screen. Everybody, hi, good evening. I'm Thomas McMurtry with Avenue Consultants. I was the project manager for the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. This was about an 18 or 19-month study. We kicked it off in early 2020. We held 2 meetings before the pandemic kind of shut us down. And it specifically was the largest AT plan done in Salt Lake County. It was designed to be a regional plan. It brought 6 individual cities together. So you can see them there on your screen. It's Cottonwood Heights, Holiday, Middale, Mill Creek, Murray, and Taylorsville. And so we had a lot of participation from each of those cities. We kind of started out with Matt Taylor kind of being the principal representative from Cottonwood Heights, but Andy took over and we did a lot of individual and collective things. Before I kind of share the whole presentation, there is a website up, is midvalleyatp.com. So you can type that into your browser and just midvalleyatp.com. That is where you can find all of the information that of the study that we did. There is an interactive map down here of the final list of projects that you can like zoom in and look at your neighborhoods and see the type of things that are ultimately recommended. If you go to your city, Cottonwood Heights, and click on that tab, that is where you can find the PDF of the draft reports, which is right here, as well as the appendix of all kind of the details that are included. If you haven't seen that, I would encourage you to go check it out. I just gave Andy a copy of the report. Again, the full PDF is here. It's a beautiful report. It's got all kinds of cool information. The information I have tonight are like slides that pulled directly out of these pages. One thing I do want to mention is that you guys were unique among the 6 cities in that you had recently completed a bicycle and trails master plan, and all of the items that were in that plan we integrated into the Mid-Valley ATP. So all of the good work that you guys had done in between 2017 and 2020, we got those projects kind of integrated into the final of the Mid-Valley ATP, which again, here's the full report, and you can go check it out. I just wanted to maybe highlight a couple of different things with the study that we did. One is just the level of collaboration was really important to us, and something that was a major focus of the study. We kind of kicked off the study by doing here. I'm going to mute this too. By doing a vision workshop and bringing everybody together to kind of like help us come up with a set of vision and goals. This is a time lapse from that meeting. We don't need to watch this video necessarily, but just to let you know that we were kind of able to bring everybody together, including UDOT, UTA, Bike Utah, Slickback, and Salt Lake County, the county itself, to kind of come and participate and collaborate with us on where we want to go. Our final vision and goals, the vision is working together to create a connected active transportation system for all ages and abilities, with individual goals of prioritizing safe routes, creating a connected backbone, kind of a priority network amongst all the cities was really important. Collaborating with the public and multi-city commitment was key, and then ultimately looking at access to key origin destinations. So all the work that we did kind of led us, we use these goals to kind of guide us. This is the existing conditions. Man, I'm realizing that you guys can't see that too well. If I do this, does that help? Not really.
Yes.
The window on the side.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out here is that Cottonwood Heights City has more existing active transportation facilities than any of the other cities. You can see how many lines are on this map of existing bike lanes and trails like the big Cottonwood Canyon Trail, and there's bike lanes throughout. This is all 6 cities combined, and again, you can see Cottonwood Heights, you guys have more existing infrastructure than the other cities, and so you're starting from a really a place of strength. We looked at a bunch of existing conditions. This is like crashes for bike pads. You guys had no fatalities, for example. You guys are really doing well. This is Strava data. Biking on the left, walking on the right. Strava is an app that you opt in. You can kind of record your rides. Again, there's a lot of heavy use on, the Cottonwood Canyon Trail and people, of course, biking all over Wasatch, and you can see walking on the Jordan River Trail and stuff too. So just a lot of users over here. We did a bike tour early on in the process that was kind of a fun event, but it was specifically designed for us to go through Salt Lake City and look at facilities and specific design types. You can see Matt kind of right here in the front, and I'm kind of back there. Andy didn't get to come on this bike tour, unfortunately. It was a lot of fun. I have a video of that too, but we don't have to watch. Well, I clicked on the wrong thing. We don't have to watch the whole video, but I was just going to point out that the purpose of the tour was so we could go and like bike through like a curb separated bike lane, like this one right here, that was Second South. We went through a bike signal. We went through, shared use path. We biked on areas that had bike lanes with on-street parking, areas that didn't. And so just to kind of like look and see all the different facility types that we have at our disposal to kind of plan with. This is going into Liberty Bike Park, and that's a specific bike signal. So it was a fun tour, and we got to kind of go out and check out things. This was the infrastructure ultimately that we kind of identified and are like planning around. It includes, traditional bike lanes and neighborhood byways, but it also includes things like protected bike lanes, enhanced sidewalks, shared use paths, those type of things. And so, again, all of this is directly in the report. We then met as a committee. This was on March 9th of 2020. It was literally a week before like the schools shut down and sent everybody home, to host a brainstorm workshop where we all got together and marked up maps on the communities. This table back here, looks like Eric, you're there, and Matt's there, is looking at specifically Cottonwood Heights. And so the outcome of that brainstorm is this map right here. So we collected those maps and kind of took a look at them. So any ideas that people could think of, we wanted to consider, right? Not blanketly apply, but certainly like consider. Besides what we did collectively as organizations, we also allowed the public to participate in the brainstorm. We built a website where they could draw lines and place points and just tell us any type of facilities they'd like to see or have. And that map is on the right. We had over 650 people participate and draw some lines and come up with some ideas. We then went through an evaluation process. I don't have to spend time on this, but we did a lot of like back in GIS to measure against how these ideas performed on the goals that were driving us, right? Were they connected? Were they safe? Those type of things. The pandemic hit and kind of we shifted everything online. Andy, you can see you're in this picture. And so we had, Zoom meetings kind of going forward. We did our PI, our public involvement online and virtually as well, including, hosting, public meetings via Zoom and then interacting via websites. So this is just some data from our public involvement. We had over 5,000 visits to our website. We got over 900 responses to our surveys. We had, 550 new ideas or locations drawn on maps. And so we feel like we did our very best given the circumstances, but we feel like we got really good participation from the public in terms of this, these things come together. I wanted to just show you one answer to the survey for your community. There's actually 3 things on here, but we asked if your ideal walking and biking facility were available, how often would you use them? And you can see here in Cottonwood Heights, 46% so they would walk daily, another 38% so they would walk weekly. That's 84%. And so that's a really high percentage. It's higher than the other cities. The other cities had 39 and 38 respectively. And then you can see bike, again, another 67% so they would bike at least once a week as well, if those facilities were available. So it just shows a big commitment from your residents and a desire for AT facilities. So this is the final outcome. These are the recommended projects. We have 240 projects recommended across all of the cities. Again, a major theme that we kind of work through on all the cities on this is just connectivity. How are we getting from the east side of the valley to the west side? Where are we connecting north-south trails? How are things going to, crossing our barriers like 215 and I-15 and these type of things. And so we came up with kind of a really comprehensive look at everything. These are our identified backbone projects, the highest priority, the ones that we would really like to see move forward. And oftentimes, they can be some of the most difficult as well. You'll notice project 7 there is Fort Union Boulevard. That was one we talked quite a lot about. It's here too. This is the map of just kind of Cottonwood Heights. Several of those, maybe the hardest projects, those backbones, we wanted to carry forward into some level of design. Is there something we can do to help move these forward by identifying either some a detailed cost estimate or some layouts that might work? And in the case well, I'll show it to you here in a second. But in the case of Holiday City, it is a piece of Fort Union Boulevard, or I'm sorry, of Cottonwood Heights. Like I said, I'll show it to you in a second. It's also on the website. These are kind of the final project types, and these match the map that you just saw in terms of what we were thinking in terms of putting things together. It's still draft, so if you looked at some projects and you're like, well, and Andy already reached out to me about Siesta and maybe Creek Road and said, hey, we might want to take a look at those and maybe rethink them. We're happy to make edits on this. Ultimately, we would love for you guys to recommend to council to adopt this plan, to use it going forward. This is Fort Union Boulevard. So again, we wanted to look at maybe some of the hardest, most complicated piece through commercial core and figure out, bike lanes have been identified here. Is there a way for us to fit them in? How would we do that? And so we had our engineers and designers taking a look at that. If you go to the website, back to midvalleyatp.com, you can go to the tab that says designs right here. And there's an interactive map. You can download, by the way, Andy, you can download KMZs of the design. So yeah, if you wanted to kind of take a look at it, but there's an interactive map here that shows the designs and specifically, how we think we might be able to fit, in this case, curb separated bike lanes, through this section of Fort Union Boulevard.
Where are we at?
So this is right in front of Ross and Smith's and kind of right in there. I don't know the address, but and the way there's a couple of tricky things. We sat down with I remember Michael. I remember we had a meeting where we kind of went over.
Yeah, works director was there.
Yeah, and we just kind of talked through. This is just conceptual. It's just can we fit this? What would it take? And so the idea is just to kind of help us vision it going forward. This is not a level of design. We didn't look at utilities. We don't have topo.
Can you scoot up that way just a little bit?
For the north,
the new bank property. You guys remember that one?
Yeah, just a little bit further.
Where the
right there. So there's some tricky things here. In the case of this, there's a right turn lane that we took. There's a free right from that northbound to the westbound that you can see we kind of took away. Like right in this corner.
Are those physical concrete pork chops?
Yes, so that's concrete. That's why we're saying curb separated. And the green is supposed to represent some grass too, right? A little bit of park strip, so that the bikes are separated from the travel lanes. They're not, it's not a huge separation, right? But yeah, the idea is to build some curb to separate bikes and give them, and on the south side, we want just kind of like a curb barrier, right? It's like about like a 6-inch high and maybe a foot wide, just kind of a curb barrier between the bike lane and, in this case, the right turn pocket, right? And where we could fit it, we wanted to have a little bit of park strip. So, you know, where it was possible, we wanted just a little bit more comfort for any cyclist kind of going through. Again, it's a concept. I can tell you our most controversial project was 3900 South. And well, 39th and 33rd were really complicated. 39th was like the hardest one. So that's kind of through the heart of Mill Creek, going over to Taylorsville. And that one, because of this design concept, they've already asked Wasatch Front to help them get funding for a design. So this is just conceptual, it's not real, but I think they're seeking $250,000 from Wasatch, and Wasatch Front wants to encourage it. They'll say, okay, great, if you guys are willing to tackle this, because there's some right-of-way issues and intersections that are difficult, you know, they're already kind of working.
There's federal money available for these.
Absolutely. And not only that, the state last year allocated a one-time $35 million that are being spent specifically on active transportation fund. Yeah. And UDOT has looked at a full-on active TIF funding that's going to be a regular revolving fund that they're going to have every single year, specifically designed just to build AT projects.
Does this dovetail nicely with our master plan?
Make sure you're, because I don't think they can.
Does this dovetail nicely with our Fort Union master plan, guys?
Yeah, it does. We see this as taking this, you know, that plan of probably half step further towards envisioning what this could actually look like.
Awesome.
Now, if this is adopted, then we have some say when a redevelopment occurs.
Can you go back to the backbone?
Well, the backbone was this regional one right here that shows all the priorities.
So I took a look at this, or the package earlier today. So from memory, Fort Union is one of the backbones, and then 2700. Yep. And what were the other ones?
So, well, Highland kind of going up,
Highland.
right? And then Wasatch. So if you look here, yeah, so that's exactly right. So Fort Union is project 7, Highland is like 281, 271 is Highland, or Highland Drive, Wasatch is like 280. Yeah. So those are kind of the backbone, kind of the key backbones here in Cottonwood Heights.
Is this being coordinated or integrated with the updates on the open space and?
Yes, yeah, that's what he was referring to,
Okay.
making sure that the open space master plan, you know, they're slightly different because that's more trails, but still
Right.
active transportation in some aspects. And we want to make sure all of the different plans mesh well together.
Yeah, I was watching last night and I heard that being discussed, and then I looked at the updates, and especially with the some of the alternative proposals for the Little Cottonwood Trail.
Yeah.
And it would dovetail pretty nicely with this.
Right. Yeah, the goal, we don't want two plans
Right.
both adopted in the city to contradict each other, so that we're.
And
only part of
the Little
finalizing.
Conway County EIS also identifies that Wasatch, they have their cross section shows both bike lanes and like a trail on the
Yeah.
west side. And that is what we have integrated to.
On the west side or
On the east side.
I was gonna say it better,
Okay, yeah.
unless it changed.
No, you're right.
No, it's east.
I know it's a moving target, so it very well could have.
Can you go to the slide with the walking trips? I think, is it 2 up?
Oh, yeah, this, where's the Strava, this one?
No, the other one that showed like 84%.
How many people would walk?
Yeah.
How many?
Oh, yeah,
It's right.
yeah. Is this one?
Yeah, so just kind of a side point on this one. My daughter goes to Butler Elementary, and they started a competition like over the last couple of weeks of like, you know, you get prizes if you walk to school. We're one of the only ones walking, but as soon as they instituted that and communicated that, all of a sudden, lots of families were walking. So it's kind of interesting in that you have all these like safe lanes and whatnot, but this is just, there's no incentives proposed on any of this, right?
Yeah, it's, yeah,
It's just,
no,
what would you do it?
yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, all of our survey questions to the public were just kind of like, just trying to get their sentiments of like, you know, what's their interest in kind of having these facilities and stuff. Although we have seen, you know, throughout the Wasatch Front, every time we build a trail, every time we like put some bike lanes, man, people just like come out of the woodwork, and we didn't even know how anxious they were to use those trails. We've been doing a couple of studies recently. We looked at one section of near some of the track stations, and we saw 850,000 pedestrians near one track stop in Mill Creek, the one at 33rd South, in 2020. And we weren't ever able to count those people before. And when you ask people, it always feels like it's kind of a small number or whatever. But also in the plan, you can find data on pedestrian actuations. So every time a pedestrian pushes a crosswalk button anywhere in the city, like that data is captured. And we have a map showing where you're having more of that. And so that we're finally now starting to put some data behind kind of anecdotal things and kind of starting to see stuff. But I know that some areas have tried, and some schools have tried incentivizing people to walk to school. In Jordan School District, at Bingham High School, they offered students who were willing to give up a parking pass, who were willing to like walk or bike to school, would get paid straight cash money for not taking the privilege of the parking pass. It was the same fee. So instead of paying $20 at a parking pass, you got 20 in cash to then relinquish your right to a parking pass, right? And they had 0 takers the first year. Nobody wanted the one.
Tell a high schooler not to drive.
Right, exactly.
Let me ask you this too, there, and I think Eric would second this, that there are different speeds of cyclists. So like a Murdoch Canal Trail, you've got an area for people that are, the road bikers that are buzzing along at 20 miles an hour. And then you've got kind of the beach cruisers and little kids with, training wheels on, and, is that accounted for? And then the second question is, at one point we talked about easements close to like 215 and kind of just areas where there is land that slapping down some asphalt that we can take advantage of existing canals that are recently buried or going to be buried or close to other utility areas or underneath utility lines, other things. So both those questions, multi-speed and then the easements.
Yeah. So by the way, so multi-speed is something that's become a bigger issue, especially people that have scooters now and they're like in bike lanes and on trails. And the answer is typically just to widen the trail a little bit. If you have a 12-foot trail, it's so much better than a 10-foot trail, right? You just kind of give people, like a little bit more space. It was specifically the main issue on Wasatch, right? The fact that we have what we call mammals, which are middle-aged men in Lycra that are like going down, the bike lanes and such. But there's still
Ouch, that hurts.
Man. There's still a lot of it's just a good acronym. There's still a lot of folks that like want to go out with their kids or bike at slower speeds. And I think that's not only the reason that the Little Conway Canyon EIS is saying, hey, let's give the mammals some high-speed bike lanes, but let's also provide a trail. And that plan exists all the way along Wasatch, all the way into Mill Creek and all the way up, right? Because there's tons of fast cyclists on there right now, but it's not that safe if you're with kids or a stroller or trailer or whatever, right?
Well,
so they need to
the
have
Jordan River Parkway is a great, and I'm a runner too. So like, no cyclist really has any business being on the Jordan River Parkway. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a fantastic place to go running, for example, but trying to do a shared trail with full-blown cyclists. I just would appreciate as we approach this, that the cyclists don't need much, but 12 to 18 inches beyond the white line in most cases, like you see going up big and little, that's all we need.
Well, and more what we're looking at is doing like cycle track next to a sidewalk or bike lane next to a sidewalk and separating the two, right? Bikes are here, peds are here. Let's give them both space. Salt Lake City's designing that on 300 West where they're doing a 16-foot dedication, 6-foot sidewalks, 10-foot trail. There's a 3-inch riser lip between them, right? So you can bike up to the sidewalk and back down as you're crossing somebody with the leash or whatever, but they really want to have kind of dedicated spaces for both of them.
Back in DC on K Street, that's dedicated, coned off both sides, dedicated bike lane. And so because there are people that are buzzing along in bikes and the cabs get too close, the Ubers get too close, and the walkers, it's very evident that you have no business being in there unless you're on a bike going at a pretty decent speed.
Yeah, they just did that like 2 weeks ago in Sugar House on Highland Drive. It's the Parley Trail section from the S line up to the Hidden Hollow. They put in the bollards, so they just stamped in these like flexible like bollard things on, and that has dedicated space to say, hey, this part of pavement is just for bikes.
I don't think we need a lot of that in Conwood Heights, but there may be some places, and that does suck up some space in order to pull that off. But if the speed differential, where you've got a grade and where people are going to get a little bit of a head of steam, you know, either make it possible for them to have a little bit of shoulder like Wasatch Boulevard coming down the hill past your place, or make it dedicated.
Yeah, grades are concerning. Yeah, and they're especially, you know, yeah, they're especially tricky, you know.
I won't ride Fort Union right now. I'll just tell you.
Oh,
It's
by the way, I
unsafe.
wouldn't either. No, absolutely
And I
not.
ride 2,000, 3,000 miles a year. I wouldn't do it.
Well, and by the way, so some of these projects you look at and they might be kind of tricky because there just isn't a right of way, right? Like, it would take something big to like get the land that we need to build a safe facility. But, you know, even if it's 20 years away, the first step is getting it on a plan, right? Just having an idea, even if we can't afford it right now or be too impactful to businesses or whatever, right? And so, you know, I think you guys are in a really good place, you know, with the way we've kind of identified projects, and as they get closer to design or we look at concepts and try to come up with dollar amounts, then you can say, okay, well, what type of things do we need? Do we need other amenities like, I don't know, benches or some green space or some shade or whatever? Then you can kind of think about how you integrate those designs.
What's the alignment on Fort Union for the trail? Is it 6 foot?
So we looked at specifically dedicated 6-foot bike lanes, right, along Fort Union, and where we could do park strip separators on both sides, right, to just kind of make it comfortable. And this is separated from the sidewalks as well. So there's still sidewalks there too.
Anything would be better than the.
Right.
the
An example of
6 inches.
this
Yeah.
Have it.
is what we've done on the 2 projects being built right now, where we've required dedication, and then we've got a portion of it, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, that's asphalt meant for cyclists, and then a wide sidewalk as well.
Perfect.
They're both
That's
curved
perfect.
up on the curb, but they're 2 distinct paths.
That seems in keeping with the Fort Union master plan.
The mixed use projects, the kind of townhome projects being built right now. One's at 1700 East and the other one's at what, Brook Hill?
2 we did last year.
Huh?
The 2 we did last year, I think.
Yeah, they're under construction right now.
Yep.
Which is a whole separate issue.
Well, and you brought up the new credit union building, the old famous Davis
Right, yeah.
project. And we were aware of this project and this design when we were going through that review, which is why, as part of your approval, we required them to build new wider sidewalks, but we didn't require the extra space for the bike lane because we knew we had this design that would use just the existing shoulder area for a future project to connect with Midvale. So,
But there's enough space, Andy, to do what we're describing here
Right,
in that space.
yeah, the concept design that the project team came up with used the existing shoulders on Fort Union for that section. Yeah.
So by the way, I was going to point you to this. This is page 31 of the report. There, we did 2 maps of level of traffic stress, where we tried to measure exactly how much, you know, traffic stress there would be to a cyclist on a facility. And so you can see, you know, there's a bunch of factors. It's kind of explained kind of over here in terms of like the things, but it's like how much space they have from cars, what's the speed limit, what's the number of cars that are going by that road, all those things. So you can see with these high stress facilities, right, ones that are like not comfortable for cyclists, that are just car only, are the ones where you want a level of separation, where they're also the ones that are like, we're most concerned about safety, where we've seen more bike pit crashes, right? And so you know, like Fort Union Boulevard and 2700. So there's things that, you know,
I might disagree with a little bit. Wasatch is actually in the Cottonwood Canyons in the bottom. There, people are used to seeing bikes there. But if you look at where 30th East, you know, you guys can picture where 30th East is on Fort Union. That section from 30th East down to 23rd, there's like 4 inches of shoulder
not even
as you're going westbound, and that on a bike is maybe the worst section of the whole city.
Right.
Like that would be the screaming high, very, very, very high stress. And I would revert back to Wasatch Boulevard simply because people are used to seeing bikes, that it might be, you know, it might be less. So not that I'm disagreeing with your results, but as you talk to cyclists that are in some of those places, we may kind of massage it a little bit. And I think it's like just shifting things just a little bit, but it wouldn't make sense to me to spend a bunch of money as you're coming out of Big Cottonwood Canyon or you're coming out of Little Cottonwood Canyon for cyclists. It's not too bad right now because frankly, most of us are going with traffic pretty well and it's not a big deal. But to bike commute for anybody at any speed on Fort Union Boulevard going west from 30th East down to 20th East is playing with your life?
Our office is on River Road. It's the same thing. I see cyclists almost every day. It's like every 2 days, I see some people biking in the gutter, right? Because there's no shoulder, there's no at all, right? Suddenly, and you up to the curb. And I'm like, get on the sidewalk. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is a bad idea. And yeah, it really is kind of dangerous out there.
How recent were the traffic studies that informed some of the decisions for the plan?
We used the latest data we possibly could. So everything that we could get our hands on in 2020, we did. So like the Actuations are from 2019. All the crash data is from like 18, 19, 20. This level of traffic stress was measured using the 2019 traffic counts, which are the latest available. They're still the latest available. There's nothing newer. And so yeah, and then we all the survey stuff we did live and whatever. So there's everything we could get. We used the absolute latest available. So
If all we got out of this is like for Union Boulevard from like Midvale, connecting up the Wasatch Boulevard for anybody in any of those communities that wanted to bike commute or wanted to go ride to the grocery store on their beach cruiser, or that would be worth the money from my standpoint.
Commissioners online, any questions?
Yeah, I have one. This is Chris Coots. Thomas, I'm wondering so we've talked a little bit in listening to your presentation about how it fits into some planning that's already been done in Cottonwood Heights. How then what's your intent with this besides, interconnectivity for the active transportation? And you mentioned, you said, I assume you mean the Wasatch Front Regional Council when you say Wasatch Front.
yeah.
What's your intent with this other than getting everything connected? Is it funding? Is it planning? What is it?
So our intent was specifically to, serve the cities to put together kind of a unified plan. It is also kind of our hope, and I know Wasatch Front feels this way, the Wasatch Front Regional Council, that they would like to see each city kind of adopt it. Midvale already has. I presented to Holiday City, to their planning commission, or actually I presented to council, but they took no action because it was a work session. I am on an agenda in Mill Creek City to kind of present to them. But it is their hope that adopted plans can then go and seek funding for these. Wasatch Front has TAP grants and CMAQ money and other things. UDOT is putting more and more money into active transportation. And so, like any plan, I would be hopeful that this doesn't necessarily sit on your shelf, but you'd share it around. We tried to make it like fun and easy to read and kind of, heavy focus on the graphics. And so that people do take a look at it and use it over the coming years, and that they can use it to specifically, see projects get done. Even if ultimately the projects that they want to implement, that you guys want to apply to any one road, even if it's slightly different than the recommendations, the whole thing is just, raising awareness and having a plan that you can like go out and apply for and get funding. UDOT's their new active TIF funding that they're looking at, and the one-time 35 million that they had last year, required a 20% match and like an adopted plan. So if it was on a plan and the city had a 20% match, they can give you money. And in the case of some projects, they gave South Salt Lake $9 million to build the last piece of the Parley's Trail that connects to the Jordan River Trail over that UTA right away. It's a lot of money that they can have at their disposal to give away. Again, assuming you guys have an adopted plan to match.
Got it.
Well, and it seems to me that's the thing that we should be looking at is an adopted plan, something in place. You can't go and apply for money. You can't say, jeepers, I hope this just shows up in the wind one day. There has to be a plan in place. And look, we know from everything we've ever done in Cottonwood Heights that we have a plan, and that plan moves and changes and it's fluid, and I get it. But if we don't have any plan in place, we're kidding ourselves. So we need to have a plan in place. And if that plan gets massaged some down the road to fit things better, then fine. But we ought to have something in place, for crying out loud.
Yeah. By the way, I was going to say, I'm more than happy to give you guys the raw InDesign files of this document. If you want to edit it a year or so from now, you can. I'm happy to make edits to Creek Road if you need to, right now, and get you guys an updated version. If we want to do that before going to council and asking them to adopt it or whatever. So, we're here to help as best we can. Yeah, this was a good plan. By the way, Wasatch Front funded almost all of the study. It was through a TLC grant. But you guys contributed, I think was $5,000 contribution from each of the 6 cities.
That's big of us.
The Creek Road piece,
You're welcome.
the Creek Road piece, I would say, as cyclists are trying to kind of head towards Sandy or come back from Sandy up towards Conway Heights or kind of crossing the valley, either coming up Highland Drive or up Creek Road, one of those would be a good option to have. Because otherwise people right now will prefer to just stay on Wasatch Boulevard as long as they possibly can and then just start, playing Russian roulette with the middle of the valley cutting west. But most of us try not to cut west any sooner than we have to. So having more east-west routes, and it would be nice to have 2 options, but if you have to choose at all between Creek Road and Fort Union, all its glory, the Fort Union master plan would be, if there's any chance it's going to water it down, I would just say that's where our focus should be, to me.
Yeah, I think our approach will be to make sure that the Conway Heights portion of this plan complies with all of our master plans, including the pending open space master plan. And then bring that back in a business meeting for public hearing and recommendation. And then we can make those amendments as the commission recommends, and then that'll go on to council.
Yeah, this was a good use of time, I think.
Yeah.
And knowing that we have other plans that are in place and we're gonna fold those together.
Yeah.
It's great, thank you.
Sure, yeah, my pleasure. And it took up too much time. But this was a good conversation. I enjoyed this.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely, anytime.
So we will be back with this, probably without Thomas, at a subsequent meeting. We'll schedule public hearing and keep moving it forward.
So just FYI, just for you guys, while our contract is kind of, done, I'm more than happy to come back and present. There's no problem for me to be here, especially if there's like questions or you want to, do amendments or whatever, I'm happy to help any way I can.
When we get to the public comment period at our stage and also at the city council stage, that might be nice to have the resident expert.
Sure.
Yeah, like I said, I presented to Middale already. We're going to delay doing it in Taylorsville. They're doing an active communities plan where they're taking this plan and trying to do design elements at key intersections, and they're going to just adopt that in like a year or so. But I presented to Planning Commission in Middale and then their council, and I presented to Council on Holiday, and I did Murray as well. And then I get Mill Creek coming up. So anyway. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas. Okay, this is what's next, the general plan.
General plan update.
Move over here so I can see the screen. If you can bring the website up. This is just a very quick update, just so all the commission is aware of where we are on this. And Commissioner Coots is actually on a steering committee that have held a few meetings now, so she may be a little more up to date than the rest of the commission. But I just want to again point to the project website on the general plan. Kind of throughout the summer, we've been doing some of the background analysis work, taking old master plans and consolidating them. We have different sub-consultants working on the different elements of the plan. So we have a sub-consultant township and range working on the transportation element. We've got GSBS who is working on housing and economic development. We've got Landmark, who's the main consultant. They're doing the land use and the open space element. So we've just been coordinating and collaborating, making sure everyone's on the same page, going over the preferred or the preliminary goals for the general plan as recommended by the steering committee. And we're now at the point where we want to take those goals out for public feedback before we come forward with an actual draft plan and start talking about each element. And it's a little hard to wrap our heads around it when it's not an actual physical document, but we do feel like public input and feedback on the goals of the plan is important, just to make sure, because that will serve as the basis for everything else moving forward. We want to just make sure we're on the same track. They're all very broad and very general. So those, that is where we are right now. Those goals, I believe, are listed, are included on this website here. And then what we're doing in October is staff, we published an article in the newsletter But we set aside time multiple days a week and in evenings for public office hours. We want people to reach out and just have an informal conversation to share the goals with, the importance of the general plan and what it is and what it does. And just try to get the idea of this in front of people so that when we come forward with an actual draft, again, rough draft plan document, people will understand what each element does and why it's important. So on the website right now, there's a lot of information. We've done some surveys prior to this date, and the results of that are all published online. But really, this is an update and again, a plug for the project website. If you have neighborhood groups or HOAs or school organizations or anything else where you're interacting with other residents, we would ask that you encourage them all to visit the website and reach out to staff if they're interested or want to be part of this and provide that public input. As we move forward, we will have more and more opportunities for public input. We looked at an open house. It's just kind of, with the state of things right now, it's not a great time to do a large indoor open house event, which is why we're trying to do smaller office hour opportunities. Again, when people are available, we'll accommodate people's schedules as much as possible. So that's really all I have for tonight, is just, again, a recommendation to visit this website and promote it in each of your neighborhoods and circles. And if commissioners are interested in scheduling some time to come talk to us, please do. And obviously this will be back to the commission numerous times between now and even the draft plan, but we're happy to talk to anybody about this.
I would think that it's the political season, but maybe we ought to put some signs. I mean, we know people who know how to print signs.
Yeah. We did a billboard.
Yeah,
We had a billboard.
no, I understand that. I'm just saying political size signs. If a few dozen of those were plunked around the city that said Cottonwood Heights, vision confirmation survey.
But I would go even simpler than that. How about like a QR code that you can pick up with your phone and just having like pieces of paper, having a city employee that just walks around, give people a chance to put it on the outside window of businesses. I think most of us would all welcome that as business owners, to just say, listen, have it, make sure you take a look at this, see how it affects your neighborhood, see how it affects where we work, and see what you think. If you want to give input,
I think there's a lot
of pages.
I think there's a lot to be said. Come on. I think there's a lot to be said for having more public input than less.
Right.
Or more opportunity for public input. If you take flyers around to all the little shops and places and say, would you put this in your window? And that's one. And we put some signs and we put a billboard up and we publish it in our city newspaper. If we've done all of those things, then when we get the kooks who come 2 years or 3 years later and say, oh, I didn't know that was on the master plan. How could that possibly be? Well, what more could we have done? We didn't ring your doorbell, but we did everything else. I think the more things that we have traceability that we really tried, then there's a lot less chance for somebody to come back and say, why didn't you tell me? So
No, that's great. Again, public input is the priority right now.
Right.
Without a plan,
they're not going to make a
just want to
plan.
talk with people.
We're not saying if you put on there no dog park ever in this neighborhood, that's never going to happen. Or, we're not saying that. What we're saying is put some input in or take care of the shutting up.
So I had a logistics question and
Yeah.
that I didn't really have clarity on. Since we are sitting commissioners that will eventually see this and vote on it, where does the ex parte communication come into play with either engaging with Cottonwood Heights tomorrow in terms of meetings, communications, et cetera, or even other communication around this?
I think it's okay to encourage people to talk to us, to the point you feel comfortable. It shouldn't sway your decision
Right.
On a general plan, on a recommendation, but
Right.
you're also not the final approving body of this. It's a recommendation.
Right.
So all we're asking is for, just promotion of the website. You don't have to give them biased information or opinion or anything like that. We just
Right.
want people to know about this resource and want them to contact city staff if they have questions.
Right, agreed. And Jonathan, I think, yeah, sharing out that there's a process going on is, I don't see that there's any issue there. Now, if they think they're going to influence your opinion on that's maybe where it gets a little uncomfortable, but I think that's easily deflected. The other thing I want you guys to know, well, two things is, the last steering committee meeting that I was involved in, the majority of the time was spent on how do we engage more with the public. So the effort and the intent is really, really there. And we can certainly help from our seats. The other thing is, if you haven't taken this survey, it's really robust. The chances to comment and, these maps that we see where you can zoom in, just sort of like what Thomas just showed us from Avenues Consulting, but this one's even better. You can zoom in and pop in your comments right where you think you have an issue. It's really great for interacting. And the more feedback they get, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was my general question also, is that because I did see the survey and I did see it, and I just didn't know if it was appropriate to take the survey even as a citizen or whatnot.
I did. I'm a citizen.
Yeah, I assumed it'd be okay, but I just wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, we think it is. If you have residents that are trying to convince you to make changes or to advocate for a specific standpoint, then we'd have you direct them to staff.
Right.
But yeah, so that's where we are is trying to get the word out on this. We have certain reach as a city, but a lot of times, the city Twitter account doesn't have a ton of followers, a ton of views. It's not interesting. Whereas people on Nextdoor can generate a lot of eyes on information. So, we're trying to just get this out there any means possible.
What are your views on YouTube in terms of once they've actually been recorded? Because I saw last night there's like 3 people actually live watching, but how many people actually watch it after the fact?
Good question. We'd have to check the YouTube channel. I know we offer Zoom now for city council as well, so people watch that way, and those recordings are all available.
But you could splash it on the front end and back end of it.
Yeah,
I think it's usually like a couple dozen.
Both people watching
Right.
probably already know.
yeah.
I didn't have
But
a lot of
no,
company last night.
We've also
They're,
reached
Some
out
of
to the
them are
school
probably
district to
nice
see
for
if
us.
there's some general information we can disseminate that way. So we're looking for means to reach as many people as possible. Maybe people that don't always have time to come down to an open house. We want to hear from as many residents as we can on this because it's important.
The little Cottonwood Canyon process, obviously the controversy helped, but I do think that from a process standpoint, that was a fairly high level of engagement in terms of volume. There were hundreds and hundreds of people.
That's good.
Yeah.
In those rooms, and there were a few wackadoodles, but there were a lot of the thing that was impressive to me was how unifying the comments and the interaction became with time. That the range from the mean to standard deviations away from, I was blown away by how close Cottonwood Heights residents were, generally speaking. So I know that it makes us nervous when we start getting too many cooks in the kitchen, but I was really, really impressed how the opinions coalesced as time went on around a pretty unified approach to where we all were on Wasatch Boulevard. I really hold out hope that our residents, when their best selves come out, will help shape this in a really positive way.
Yeah, we've seen that in the past, the Wasatch Master Plan. We did an open house when we were identifying goals. There's a tendency to engage. It's a little easier when there's a plan or a map to look at. We don't have that yet, which is why it's a little more difficult. But still, we want to educate residents on what a general plan is, why it's important, why they should care, why they should stay up to date. And then this, again, will lead into the traditional, here's a draft plan, give us comments on it process, which will come next. And this will carry over into the next year. It's election season. The council's gonna turn over here in a few months. So this will carry on through the beginning and maybe into the middle of 2022.
It's an exciting time.
It is, general plan's a big deal. This is technically an update, but I'll call it a very comprehensive update.
Well, I think that's true. Look, the initial master plan, we've had that discussion on a number of things. Well, this has been in the master plan since the city was established. And who exactly did that? There wasn't a lot of public input in that. There wasn't a lot of, they had to have a plan in place. And so there was a plan. And the fact that it's on the master plan doesn't mean that it's gospel. It doesn't mean it's the only way to do things, nor would this master plan. But at least there's some more input to it. So I'm enthusiastic for it.
So that's all I have. Any other questions, I'm happy to answer, but again, please visit that website and try to engage in that and get the word out and have people contact us. We're ready to talk to people.
So I assume we're well within our bounds to make whatever community contact with any organizations that we know of.
Yeah, we're just requesting to get
That's fine.
the website out, you can give Andy and I's contact information out to people that want to learn more. Yeah, please.
Commissioner Coots, any more just information from your interaction, just in terms of the flavor of what it's been like or just where it's headed?
Not really yet. I mean, like Mike said, there's a lot of information still coming in. There obviously was a robust discussion about the EIS process with Little Cottonwood Canyon and Wasatch Boulevard. But that true of all of the major ways we get around in Cottonwood Heights, a big part of the discussion. That's one that I would call out. And then I was pretty impressed. I mean, we haven't gotten delved into this kind of depth in the steering committee, but just looking at our materials for this update that Mike's giving us, there's so much information there. And I think what Mike said about having this group of sub-consultants, there's not just one planner working with the city. They've got, like Mike said, the transportation expert and the planning expert and the economic development expert, and it's really robust level of information. So I think, as Craig said, our master plan dates back to we've got to have a master plan. We're a new city, to this, which is really a much more mature effort, in my opinion, and hopefully the outcome with a lot more input will show that.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Coots, I have another question. In terms of some of the initial or ongoing conversations, does the technology infrastructure come up at all, just in terms of a fiber network improvements, et cetera?
That's probably for Mike. I haven't been a part of that conversation.
Sure, I will say from the economic development side of this is looking at that because, and they're actually, it's actually nice. We got a COVID related grant to do a more in-depth economic study of the city and how the pandemic affected the city and how things are changing, which will tie into the general plan. But the way people spend money, the place people work, the whole way our economy works has shifted a little bit, and some of that stuff might be temporary, but some might not be, with people working at home. And we've seen a lot of sales tax revenue driven by online sales, which affects roads and affects working from home, affects utility usage at times of day. So that will all be wrapped into the economic development portion of the plan. But even broader than that, rather than have all these chapters that have their own goals and kind of exist on their own,
right,
our goal is to have generalized goals that are citywide goals, things we want to achieve, that incorporate multiple elements within each goal, so that each element, land use is related to transportation, is related to sustainability. They're all interwoven. There will be separate plan elements, but the vision we have is that they will all be cross-reference and tie into each other, which makes it a more natural, a more realistic plan when you look at the way cities operate.
I think too, just for us as the Planning Commission, it might make more sense. We see this come up and just as an outgrowth of the master plan where our ordinances, our city ordinances, and they are kind of all over the place. And I think it's based on the structure of the original master plan. And so hopefully that kind of structure that Mike's talking about helps to make things a little more clear and streamlined. So people who come into us with a, you know, a code issue that's why they're there to come before the planning commission. It's clearer to them before they even get to us, and clearer to us as we discuss it with them. So hopefully that structure helps. It feels a lot better to me, I have to say.
Okay, thanks. We'll keep you in the loop. We'll probably be back in the next, before the end of the year with a more in-depth discussion, probably about the goals. Once we have some public input and feedback on the goals themselves, we'll present those in a meeting, get the commission's feedback, and keep going.
Thanks, Mike.
And then the last item is just an update on the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Master Plan. Andy, if you can bring up that presentation. This was presented, the commission made a positive recommendation on this a number of months ago, as did the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee. So where it's a master plan, the city council's the final deciding body. It was presented to the city council, and we held a public hearing at a meeting last month. And one specific element of the plan received a substantial amount of public input and concern. So we've made a proposed amendment to that that's been supported by the council. So this is the same presentation I gave the council at that meeting. So I'll go over these first slides fairly quickly because this was just a refresher, given that the commission's looked at this already. But again, the scope of the plan, of any master plan, and particularly this one, is the citywide plan regarding parks, trails, and open spaces throughout the city. It provides a long-range broad vision and helps city leaders in the future make recommendations as it pertains to budget decisions, city policies, new city codes and ordinances, development requirements, which would be land use decisions, as they relate to parks, trails, and open spaces. It's not a construction plan. There's a lot of lines on the plan that show potential future trails and bike lanes and open space locations. This doesn't approve construction of any of that or give the city any authority to move forward, but it makes recommendations. Same as the land use map in a general plan, or the sidewalk map in a transportation master plan do. At the request of the council, we have added a few additional references in the master plan, which is now uploaded on the city website. One is an acknowledgement of private property rights. I won't read the full thing, but it states that the city respects private property rights. If there's any improvement on this plan that affects private property, it doesn't give the city authority to go make those improvements. The city has no eminent domain authority when it comes to parks, trails, and open space. And that's not recommended as an implementation strategy. Rather, any future improvement envisioned in this plan that affects private property would either be required during substantial redevelopment, not just a home addition, but, a new subdivision, a commercial redevelopment, big projects like that, or through real estate negotiations of willing landowners. But again, this was a big point of emphasis at the city council and to the public that recently got very interested in this. The city has no authority to use private property against the will or the consent of a private property owner. Also, at the request of the council, we've added a reference to nationally recognized park standards. This just helps justify when we're recommending more park space or trails. There's a benchmark there that we're trying to come closer to. Go ahead, Andy. So now I'm going to talk about the future trails chapter because this is the part of the plan that received the most public interest, actually all of the public interest. The purpose of that trails chapter is to envision an interconnected, both active transportation and recreational trail network that connects neighborhoods to city and regional parks, but also to other cities, as Thomas talked about with the Mid-Valley plan. Basically, we want a trail network through the city that can be usable by casual recreationalists, kids and families, but that can also be used if desired as a legitimate means of transportation, which is active transportation. And then we want to provide access to public lands for city residents and visitors as well, without interfering with the quality of life of nearby residents. So the Little Cottonwood Trail that was on the master plan was the the trail alignment that caused a lot of concern, pretty much from neighborhoods all along that trail alignment. And when this reached the council level, the council was very concerned about this as well. The original intent of the Little Cottonwood Trail is shown here. It was always envisioned as a very long range, 100-year type trail improvement that, over a long time would be, land would be set aside as areas age out and redevelop, or as landowners, seek to partner with the city on a land acquisition, because most of that trail alignment does cross private properties. We were aware that would be a very long range kind of, huge vision that would take a lot of time and create a lot of technical challenges to actually implement. But, one of the goals was to provide a trail amenity along waterways. However, that created a lot of concern and some confusion, some misinformation of people thinking that this was a trail development plan, which is fine. That being said, the council is very concerned about it as well and communicated to us pretty clearly that we needed to provide an alternate solution to that particular future trail on the plan. So this is the alternative we've developed. It still is a trail envisioned in the area of the Little Cottonwood Creek. However, we've moved it off of the creek, the waterway alignment, and are now proposing it along the public rights of way. So Danish Road, Creek Road, and Siesta Drive is where that future trail has been recommended to be now. Again, same scope here. It's a long range project. It doesn't change any of the other parameters I've talked about in terms of implementing it. But by putting it within public rights of way as what we're calling an urban trail system, we feel that creates much less conflict with concerns of private property, privacy and property rights challenges. It also still allows us ultimately to achieve our goals of an interconnected trail network. Commissioner Mills, this gets back to your comments on the Mid-Valley Plan. It's not a design document at this point. So as we design this, we would go in and look, how do we accommodate cyclists, the active transportation cyclists with the passive recreation seekers, and that would be vetted through the design process and how we achieve that. But go to the next slide, Andy. This just shows kind of what the plan was and what the plan is now. And the alternative that's shown on this presentation is now what's reflected in the draft plan that's published online. So where it was a natural trail before, it's now an urban trail. These next slides, I want to provide a big caveat that these are just visual examples of a lot of different types of urban trails and what these can be and what they can look like. Because we've still heard some concern of people worried about increased crime in neighborhoods and things like that with an urban trail. But we've got a few local examples. The Big Cottonwood Trail runs right near some residential properties in the city. And you can see in one instance, it's a curb separated asphalt path. In another, it's essentially a wide sidewalk. They both achieve the same desired result, but they look different. So that it can be accommodated based on the context of where the trail is. Yeah.
I live right across the street from that, and we all love it. And it has dramatically increased traffic. And I don't think there hasn't been a dramatic increase in crime. So, I mean, just in terms of just feedback from the trench from someone who's right in the middle of that, we all love it. My whole neighborhood loves it. We use it, but more than we using it, people park all the way along it and will start walking from wherever, from the beginning of it to the end of it, and we'll start walking or riding it. And we welcome those people to be right next to our neighborhood. It's been nothing but a good thing. So I defend the direction you guys have taken, and the fact we've had to walk it back is a little sad to me, because I think that they don't realize this would be a blessing for their neighborhoods, and it's some infrastructure that you wouldn't get that kind of improvement to the sidewalk going through your neighborhood if it wasn't an urban trail. So anyway.
Yeah, keep going, Andy. So again, more examples. This can look like a ton of different things depending on how much right-of-way area you have and where you are. The main concern with the urban trail we heard were from residents along Siesta Drive, which is a more residential area. Certainly along Creek Road, that could be one idea, but in Siesta, it'd be obviously more contextual with the character of the neighborhood. But we do feel like it's an important connection because Crestwood Park is in there, provides a potential connection up to Park Ridge up above through the park. So we've identified it. There are sidewalks, not the full extent of Siesta, but in that Siesta Drive area. So what we're proposing isn't drastically more intense than a sidewalk that's there currently. But again, examples of what that can be. You can see in 9th East and Murray and 94th South and Sandy, they had a different amount of land to work with, and both again would achieve the same vision. So
That 94th, is that a bike lane on the left side?
we think so.
We were talking about that today because we both drive past that.
I know, I've driven past it and I thought, what in the heck, what are
Yeah.
they doing there?
You never see anyone on it, actually.
I
It
thought
looks
it was
like a nice
pedestrians for squirrels or something, because
I see a maintenance headache.
and that too.
I'm gonna invent a new bike.
The squirrel bike.
So again, these are examples of what an urban trail could be, just to dispel some of the concerns that have been communicated to me. But if you can go back to the proposed alternative, that's really, those are the only changes that we've made to the plan, again, at the direction and with the support of the city council in response to the substantial amount of public input that they heard in September. So again, we feel it still achieves the goals of the trail element of the plan. It does not authorize construction or anything like that. It would go through future planning and design and discussion and public input before anything is done there.
Well, financing, you're right, it's a
Absolutely.
100-year program. They're not.
It's a plan. It's not a, it
Yeah,
says this is important.
Exactly.
So procedurally, the council just recommended that we as staff provide updates to both the commission and the committee. We do not need to take updated action. The council has full authority to make modifications to the plan as recommended, as they recommend. The commission could choose to take public comments again if you want to open it back up. That being said, the city council at this point in the process is the public hearing body. Comments can be submitted to the council anytime before they make a decision. So we'll leave that up to the commission, although we would suggest that reopening the public hearing at this level is not necessary, as there is still an avenue to make public comments, and it's directly to the deciding body, which is the city council. So this is our update to you. We will take this to the Open Space Committee at their meeting in 2 weeks and give them the same presentation, and then it will be back to council probably in earlier mid-November for direction from them on what to do next.
Are both the existing and the alternative as proposed going to be part of the new master plan?
Good question.
No, the existing is gone.
Okay, so it's just being replaced with
The alternative is what is in there now.
Yeah, and it's fine.
Thanks for bringing it back to us.
So
Yeah.
that's the update. Happy to answer any questions, but that's what we have for you on this one.
Well, I have one, Mike, but it's probably, I mean, it's outside of the scope of this, but it's just out of curiosity. One, I think I echo Commissioner Mills, and I think it's sort of a shame and a little short-sighted. I understand the sensitivities, and I don't mean to dismiss that. But as a planning tool, it's a little unfortunate. But I appreciate that you spent the time to try and find something that embraces the spirit of following Little Cottonwood Creek. The other question I have is can you tell me why just going right through Crestwood Park would have been eliminated as a part of that trail?
Here and here.
From the backside of Brighton to follow.
Yeah, the same concern. That green line that hits the northeast corner of Crestwood is through private properties.
How many properties are there from there to the Highland?
I don't know.
I think like maybe 3. One is like an HOA, but there are a couple.
We heard from most of the neighbors that live in that area. Actually, most of the neighbors all along that, but
all along here.
But
Yeah.
what they do is ring a park. I mean, and I realize it's a county park, but it's a public park. So why couldn't the trail just move right in there?
So the revised plan envisions an enhanced urban trail element on Siesta Drive, which would also connect directly into Crestwood.
Okay, so it's an enhancement to instead of and
So-
separate from.
Rather than a trail hitting it from the east side through private properties, we're now proposing the connection be made along the Siesta Drive right of way.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to get, I get their sensitivities and I don't mean to dismiss it, but to have to kind of feel stuck in a direction based on just, 30 people in a city of 38,000 is tough.
Yeah, I just some anecdotal comments. Where I used to live, we had one. I lived right next to one of the largest trail systems in the DC metro area, and I could just step outside my house and within a couple of minutes be on the trails. And there was one section that was disconnected from it that we ended up connecting as part of a mixed use project, and the economic development driver on that was ginormous. And we heard all the typical negative comments in terms of crime and whatever else, and then it just never happened. But what did happen was the trail got activated and a lot more people were on it, and it connected two disparate areas, and it was a huge amenity, and the value of houses that were either abutting the trail or near just shot up almost 100%.
Are there any alternatives on Forest Creek Lane or South Park Ridge? I mean, it looks like there's already a connection above to Park Ridge going due north, but kind of the neighborhoods that are up above. I mean, it might require some switchbacks or something like that, but Park Ridge would get us up attached to the road to Bengal. If you follow Bengal down, that turns into Park Ridge. And there might be some options either off of Curtis Drive or Park Ridge Circle, in addition to Forest Creek Lane, that avoid that HOA or that Regal Stream. And some of there may be, I'm just pointing out, there might be some alternatives there as you guys kind of look at peruse
I
alternatives.
think it's really hard to get off the end of that peninsula where it sticks out down there closer to 13th East. If you get up on Park Ridge and you're going westbound,
Mhm.
you've got a real hard time getting off that peninsula. It's hundreds of feet up.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Go stand in Home Depot's parking lot and look up.
Mhm.
Yeah, Park Ridge does connect directly into Crestwood. There's an access.
It
there.
does. There's one due north, like dead center of Crestwood.
Yeah,
But I'm pointing out to the east, if we wanted to stick to something northeast, there may be a couple of other little pockets, kind of like not just due east, but kind of radiating up there. I mean, maybe we get the same response from other neighbors, but at some point that might be worth just, you guys could probably rule that out in a matter of minutes in terms of possibilities, but I just, the interconnectedness and our access to Crestwood, I feel like it's a little island down there, and it's a wonderful little island. I'm
We're keeping it
embarrassed.
that way too, thanks.
Yeah. First rule of Crestwood, don't talk about
That's
Crestwood, right?
exactly right.
Well, creek does run straight to in and out.
Right.
It's true. You can float your way
Yeah.
in and out.
Yeah, it sounds like it's too little too late, but I do think it's a fundamental shift in the essence of the plan, going from showing that long-term route along the creek to a route along a public right of way. If you think about that trail, the Big Cottonwood Trail next to Dan's house, the best section of that trail is next to the creek in the two sections west and east of the part that you showed. And the worst part of the trail is the one that's on the public right of way. I mean, it's still better than not having a trail, but it's a fundamental shift in the priorities of the plan. And I think it's unfortunate, but it sounds like it is what the council has decided.
And to Jesse's point, to Commissioner Allen's point, I mean, as we talk about that section with the property owner that applies there, as we kind of talk about the maneuverings with the old mill and that whole project, I know we're not talking, it is private property. So, but boy, continuing that along Big Cottonwood Creek and connecting it at the very, very top by Wasatch, would be crazy not to try to weave that in or at least show that our intention as a city would be, we would like to have that. I don't, without superimposing, I know that it's sensitive to show that we have a plan to put something right next to the creek, but I think every creek that we've got, we would love to have a trail next to that. I don't want to hurt people's feelings, but I'm with Jesse. It's sure more fun to be on the creek part
Sure
than
it
it is
is.
on the street.
Yeah, I mean, the trail that I live by, it had sections that were roadway and they were terrible, and they had sections right next to the Anacostia River, and it was awesome. Especially after a storm, when the water was rushing.
So what we'll do, we won't make any changes before this comes back to the council, but I will report back to them on the commission's feedback tonight and just let them know. And obviously it'll be up to them on if they want to make any additional changes, but what we're showing as our alternative is what we've been kind of directed and to put on the plan. And I don't think we have support if we don't go forward with that, but I will report back on the feedback tonight and we'll kind of go from there. I anticipate, like I said, this will be in November sometime, that it goes back to the council, probably for an updated discussion before a decision is made.
Thanks for the update, Mike.
Move we adjourn.
Straight to business. Yeah, and this is our only meeting tonight. We don't have a business meeting agenda, so this is it.
One quick reminder, this is a 2-meeting month, so we do have another meeting 2 weeks from tonight. But that's the only additional item I have for you.
Thank
Will
you.
it be a hybrid meeting also?
Yeah.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I think that was an aye, I hope.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, thanks.